Rain could spoil some weekend celebrations when you may have to dodge showers for graduation and Mother's Day.
Reckless driving and parking in handicapped spots on campus. Revelations about UNC football players' off-field behavior. So what's being done about it? Let's take a trip to Murph's Turf to find out. And you have a lot of questions about a report linking thousands of released prisoners to serious crimes, some even murder. We talk with our NC Capitol team about how we got here and what this means for our state's Senate race. Well, thank you for joining us on this Friday night at 7 o'clock. Great to have you here. I'm Ashley Rowe. UNC football players are caught speeding. Dozens of inmates are caught reoffending after their release. And schools in our area have a chance to get caught up. Canvas is back online. That one making a big headline maker this week. We get so many emails every night. We want you to keep joining in the conversation. 7 p.m. at WRAL.com. That's our email address. You already have your phone out, so why not send us a message? Send us your questions, your comments, your feedback on anything you see in this newscast. First up, a handful of rain chances over the next few days. Check out this graphic. We've got a chance on Saturday, Sunday, and Monday. Maybe a little something on Wednesday, too. But not everybody's going to see this. Kat, we keep saying that we need this rain. How are things looking for the weekend?
Nobody's going to see anything like what we saw yesterday with that good soaking rain. Tomorrow, Mike and I did bump up rain chances to 40%, and then we lowered rain chances to 20% on Sunday after looking over all of the new data this afternoon. 80 degrees for the high tomorrow, 86 on Mother's Day. The thing about tomorrow is that there is not an organized front that's moving in. So these are just little bits of upper level energy that are going to swing through, and they could spark a few showers here and there. We'll have the chance for that in our southern counties in the morning, and then our next best chance would come during the afternoon hours, but likely moving out of here by the time we get to dinner time tomorrow night. This is not going to be a washout. As you can see, there's a lot more dry areas than wet areas at any given point in time. It's a good idea to have your WRAL weather app on hand. If your notifications are turned on, you'll be notified if there's rain approaching. For Mother's Day, a really nice day in the forecast, just that 20% rain chance. I'll have a closer look at what Monday's rain chances could bring coming up.
All right, Kat, let's get you caught up on some of today's big headlines. Here are 5 things you should know right now. 2 people died after a crash along I-85 in Durham. The collision caused traffic delays for hours. Just such an awful mess here. The interstate is back open. We're waiting for Highway Patrol to share more information about those who died. The Wake County District Attorney's Office dropped charges against a man accused of threatening to kill President Trump. Daniel Swain faced charges for drug possession and resisting arrest. He still faces separate federal charges after investigators say he threatened to kill the president and caused an Apex car wash to evacuate. Canvas is back online after a breach caused concern among students, families, and schools. The online learning platform says it's working on investigating what happened and communicating with customers. We know student and teacher information was accessed in Wake and Durham counties. State health officials tell us right now there is no connection between Americans on a cruise ship that dealt with a hantavirus outbreak. DHHS says it has not been contacted by the CDC. The State Department is working on arranging a flight to get all Americans home before they go into quarantine. Some NC State students had their last year's loans wiped out today. Incredible. A school donor announced today that he would cover the loans for all students at the Textile College's graduation ceremony today. Anil Kochar is doing it in honor of his father, who is a graduate of NC State. Let's talk about the big story that we broke last night here at 7 o'clock because we got so many emails into the 7 p.m. inbox. As a quick recap, a New York Post report shows a handful of the 3,500 inmates released in a COVID-era settlement have since reoffended, some charged with murder. Many Republicans have called out former Governor Roy Cooper because he was the governor at the time of the settlement, though his campaign says he fought against the release of those prisoners. There's a lot of back and forth about this between the political parties and between many of you in our inbox. But this story has layers. There are some gray areas, and there is a lot of historical context. So to understand why this is coming up now and what it means for the Senate race this November, let's start with a look back at how we got here. This all goes back to the beginning of the pandemic, spring 2020. Stay-at-home orders, closed schools and businesses, all those tough COVID-era restrictions by Governor Roy Cooper. But some groups thought Cooper wasn't doing enough to protect people who had no options to protect themselves. Prison inmates. ACLU and NAACP joined a handful of other groups suing Cooper. They claimed our state prisons are overcrowded, forcing thousands of people to live and work in dangerous conditions where it is impossible for people to protect themselves from this deadly disease. And that wasn't wrong. At the time, the state prison population was more than 34,000, even though total capacity was closer to 27,000. And multiple state prisoners and state employees working in prisons did die from COVID. The ACLU and NAACP argued the state should release some of its prisoners. Cooper and the DOJ said no. They responded to the request, writing, quote, Governor Cooper and other officials are already acting to address the unique challenges posed by the COVID-19 pandemic, including in-state prisons. The relief requested here is unwarranted. But a few weeks later, Wake County Superior Court Judge Vincent Rozier Jr., a Democrat, said he was leaning toward ruling in favor of the ACLU, in favor of prisoner release. So instead of going to trial, Cooper's DOJ made a deal. The state would release some prisoners targeting people with underlying health conditions or with release dates that were already approaching. They set guidelines similar to the guidelines set by the federal government. 3,500 inmates made the list, and that's how we got here. State government reporter Will Doran, you have been doing a ton of reporting on this, and we have been getting a ton of questions. So I'm going to bring some of our viewer questions to you in just a minute, but I want to just highlight two things for folks. First, a reminder that this was a COVID-era settlement. This was all about trying to stop the spread of COVID-19 in prisons. Also, Roy Cooper wasn't the only one doing this. There was a federal program about this, too.
Yeah, that's exactly right. The Brennan Center, which is a group in New York, ran the numbers nationwide, and they found that more than 100,000 prisoners were released from state and federal prisons just in the first 3 months after COVID hit. And that doesn't even include the 3,500 from North Carolina, since we were months later.
Right. Okay, let's get into questions. This one first from Will. Okay, coincidence. Why is this information just coming out now? Why was it not released earlier?
Well, there's really two pieces to that. One is actually this list of people who were released was put under seal by the judge. So it was secret. We didn't know who was released originally, but someone got a hold of it, leaked it to the media, and now we're able to go through it and do this kind of work. And I think that kind of leads to the second part of that answer is it's about politics. Roy Cooper is running for our open U.S. Senate seat right now. This happened 5 years ago, but it's being brought up again because obviously the U.S. Senate, high-profile race. Republicans want to stop him, hope that they get their own candidate in office instead.
Okay. I want to bring up a question from Penny. One of the people who was on that list that you talk about was DeCarlos Brown Jr., and she's asking about him. She says, I am especially interested in the man who murdered the young woman on the train. She's referring to Irina Zarutska. The public needs to be aware of the inmates that are on the streets and are dangerous. So that's coming up from Penny. What do we know about DeCarlos Brown Jr.? He was actually released before
That's exactly
else.
right, Ashley. He was released already from prison before the Cooper administration signed the settlement. And there's actually a lot of people on the list who fit that same kind of criteria. And so what it looks like is once they agreed to release those 3,500 people, they were looking for some sort of reason to not actually release 3,500 inmates onto the street. And so what they did is they found a bunch of people who had recently been released and said, we're just going to kind of backdate those, fudge the numbers a little bit, and include those in the settlement so that we have to release a smaller number of inmates in total.
That leads me to a question, more like a comment from Mike, and maybe you can help clarify some things here. Mike says, if the ACLU brought a suit and the judge ordered that prisoners be released, as Governor Roy Cooper obeyed the law, saying that he released prisoners makes it seem like he showed up at the prison and randomly set people free. First, we should probably clarify, just as you were talking about, there was a judge involved. However, this was a settlement. There was no trial. The judge didn't force anything.
Right. So the judge had indicated before the trial that if this had gone to trial, Cooper was going to lose and that he was going to rule in favor of releasing prisoners. And so the decision that Cooper made and that the state's prison officials made was, hey, let's not risk taking this to trial, given everything the judge has already said. Let's just go ahead and settle with this group, release the number that we can come to, and avoid having even more people released. And that's really the big political question here is, should Cooper and the state have fought this more, have taken it to trial, and maybe even if they lost the trial, fought it on appeal? Or was it the smart decision, like they did, to make this settlement and just quickly settle this?
Thank you, Will.
Thank you.
WRAL put a team of reporters on this story. We are looking into the crimes committed by the inmates who are released and analyzing the impact this might have when Cooper and Whatley face off in November. You can find all of that coverage on WRAL.com and the WRAL YouTube page. All right, reckless driving charges, speeding, tricked out cars parked in handicapped spots. UNC football players at the center of it again. What's being done to tackle more off-the-field issues? We take a trip to Murph's Turf with a special appearance from WRAL's Pat Welter. And tonight at 11, a big bust in a series of Wake County car break-ins. What investigators found and how they caught up to the suspects. That's tonight on WRAL News at 11. WRAL has investigated new reckless driving charges and months of complaints about UNC football players. Some were cited for speeding, others for speeding in a school zone, others for parking in handicap spots. UNC has had trouble with this sort of behavior from athletes in the past, and it got us thinking, who's responsible here? I mean, sure, the athletes are responsible for what they did behind the wheel, right? But aren't the coaches or administrators supposed to keep an eye on these guys? We haven't gotten a straight answer on who's in charge. So to figure out about what can be done about all of this, I took a trip to Murph's Turf. Hey, Murph, I've got to talk to you more about this story about these UNC players that are being caught speeding and parking in handicapped parking spots and more. What is the professor saying about, his concerns to the athletics department about what's going on campus?
I thought one of the most interesting parts of this entire story was Bubba Cunningham, the athletic director, basically saying, I'm trying everything I can. I can't apologize enough. Disappointed this behavior hasn't changed. There was been this back and forth of emails over a 5-month period. And Pat Welter, my colleague here at WRAL, was able to get these emails. And when you look at them, it's pretty clear that no one has been able to change this behavior.
Look, hey, we were just talking about you.
Yeah, I know. You guys talking about the driving story? I was just printing out some notes on it.
Pull up a chair.
Sure.
I've got some questions for you. When we first reported on this kind of behavior not long ago, Bill Belichick said, we're handling it. We are addressing this situation. Now there's more of this going on. What does that tell us about the ability for these coaches and administrative staff to rein in these kids?
Yeah, I mean, it's a new season with a new team. It's some new hope to a certain extent for Carolina football going forward. And we've heard that Bill Belichick is personally checking on players in class, but they clearly have not buttoned up the driving issues, which is a much more serious issue, right? I mean, this is not just, sure, and someone could die, right? Like, we're talking about speeding, reckless driving, and we're talking about parking in handicap spots. It's just a matter of respect and decency to other students and other people on campus.
This is not something that is specific to UNC. This is happening at schools across the country. What's the bigger picture that's going on here?
The bigger picture to me is accountability. Who's in charge of the athletic department? Who's in charge of the football program? Who has the ability to change the behavior of these people? We've seen at Georgia that no one has been able to change that. Kirby Smart has won national championships, still hasn't been able to get his guys to kind of respect the law when it comes to speeding and cars, and it's led to some tragic results at Georgia.
And if you look at the players that are having the most documented cases and being pulled over and charged and even parking in these handicap spots, a lot of them are high-profile transfers or high-profile returning players, a.k.a. they are getting paid the most money.
In this era where college sports are inching closer and closer to pro sports, what responsibility does the university have? God forbid, something does happen and somebody does get hurt.
I think it would make for a novel case, all right, a novel legal case. Where does this happen? Does it happen in a parking garage on campus? Does it happen at a street on campus? And that car or whatever was provided by some of the money you're being paid. They're not employees, but I think a legal case could be made that maybe they are employees.
I'm not a lawyer, so I don't know if there's a legal responsibility for Bill Belichick and UNC football to rein in these players necessarily, but there's certainly an ethical and a moral one, right? Like, as professional as college sports are now, they are still college. These are still young men, and there's a certain responsibility there to help mold them, to show an example. And, like, are we in the room? Do we know everything that's being done? No, but what we have been told by sources and what we've documented, that example is not necessarily being set.
Guys, great reporting. Appreciate your insights. Thank you. Over here with Kat now. Kat, there's so much going on this weekend, of course, Mother's Day, and it looks like any mom who wants to go out for a nice walk can do that without having to worry about rain.
It's going to be pretty nice. We lowered rain chances just 20% on Mother's Day. I know a lot of people like to do brunch. These pancakes in the background look awfully appetizing tonight. 10 a.m., 71 degrees at noon, 77 and 82 degrees at 2 o'clock for Mother's Day brunches. It's going to be a great day outside. We lowered rain chances to 20% on Sunday. 86 degrees is your high, so hopefully mom likes warm weather, and that's her gift. 80 degrees on Saturday, and tomorrow we've got about a 40% chance of rain. The best chance for rain is going to come during the early afternoon hours. However, it's still going to be scattered. Not everybody's going to see rain tomorrow. And I want to mention there is a small chance for rain in the morning. That would primarily be south of the triangle. Sunday, it's during the afternoon and evening that we would have that small 20% chance for rain. So I don't show this a lot. It's technically called vorticity, but what it is, it highlights where we have some systems in the upper levels of the atmosphere with the orange and yellow splotches that you see here. And the thing about this is it just shows they're just little splotches that move on by. When you have a front or a strong organized system, you have a very clear line or a really big area of energy that moves through. That's not the case this weekend. Even into early next week, it's looking less of the case. So the point here is that not everybody's going to see rain. It's not a very organized system that we're looking at. Our next front, and that's what we consider an organized system, will move in on Monday. With it, we'll see some scattered showers and storms. Not a total washout. In fact, models are really backing off the amount of rain with that system. There's only one that's holding on to higher rain chances. A live look at Fenton and Cary. It looks like they're having a some kind of festival. I see some Canes gear set up here. Maybe a Canes watch party gearing up for tomorrow night. We'll see. Your Friday night planner looks good. 70 degrees at 7 o'clock. 9 o'clock, we're at 62, and by 11, 59 degrees. Really comfortable tonight. Here's that small chance for rain tomorrow morning, mainly in the southern part of our viewing area. Once we get to the afternoon, some of those scattered showers, even an isolated rumble of thunder are possible, and those are likely to be out of here by about dinner time tomorrow evening, so it's not going to be a washout. Looking okay for a lot of the graduations that we have in the area. Let's talk about the next 7 days. You know, highs are in the 70s and 80s each day. That's what you want to see for spring. Overall, the weekend has more dry hours than wet hours. Monday, we've got a 60% chance of rain and storms. Tuesday, a little bit of a cool down. We dip down into the upper 40s by Tuesday morning. And then toward the middle of next week, we could see some additional rain in the area. Not a lot of confidence on exactly when that rain will fall between Wednesday and Thursday, but somewhere in that time frame, we should have another system come on through. As we get into May, we see less of those big ups and downs in temperatures, and you can start to see that on the 7-day. We've got one morning in the 40s, but we're not going, all the way down into the 30s and back up into the 80s in 24 hours anymore.
April truly was such a yo-yo in that regard. And Kat, now there's no burn ban across the state. That's showing us a good sign, and we're seeing these repeated days of at least some rain and chances for rain, but not enough to tackle the drought.
Not enough to tackle the drought. And when we look past the 7-day forecast into next week and the week after that, drier than normal conditions may return.
Kat, thank you. Hey, all the graduation photos in the WRAL garden and the ceremonies starting today got us feeling nostalgic. Let's look back at graduation ceremonies in 1998. Your Friday moment of nostalgia is next. This weekend, all three of the big universities in our area are holding graduation ceremonies: UNC, Duke, and NC State. It's such a special time for the students and their families. Not only are they starting a new chapter of their lives, they're also getting out into the world, getting jobs, starting careers. We found a story about college graduation in the WRAL archive from 1998. It's a good one. Thanks for watching. Have a great weekend.
Two universities, more than 7,000 graduates, all turning their tassel on the same day. Child Defense Fund President Marian Wright Edelman and former President George Bush reminded graduates of their civic responsibility.
You're going to be selfish and say, why me? Or if it feels good, I'll do it? Or will you roll up your sleeves, get involved, and put something back?
I hope this graduating class will never go out and work just for money. It's not going to save your soul, and it won't help you sleep at night.
And while the commencements at Duke and UNC were decidedly different in nature, thanks to a strong economy and low unemployment, the future for all graduates looks bright.
It looks pretty good so far. I had 2 or 3 offers, but this was the earliest one and the best one, so this is the one I took.
College graduates aren't the only ones seeing dollar signs. Graduation weekend usually means large crowds, and large crowds usually means big bucks for local businesses.
Next to the Florida State game, it's the North Carolina Final Four. It's the biggest day of the year.
Restaurants really ring in on the cash. Many were booked 6 months in advance.
We expect to be swamped.
And hotel rooms are at a premium. Graduation weekend at the Washington Duke Inn has been booked for the past 4 years and straight into the year 2003. By that time, today's graduates should be well on their way to success. Julia Lewis, WRAL TV5 News.